right, we're going to be using Federal 115 grain brass, and we're going to hopefully either confirm or dispel the myths about Magpul magazines having issues in the new Gen 5. And while we're at it, we're going to test the Gen 3 and prior Glock mags and the new Elite Tactical Systems Glock 17 mag. So this gun has not been shot other than the proofing rounds at Glock, so I have not added any kind of lubrication whatsoever. As you can tell, it's just got factory cutting oil and their copperized lubricant in the gun, so we're going to go with that and just give a fair and accurate test. I'm going to start with the Magpul mag and see how well it performs. So far so good. Now the ETS mag. So far so good. This is the Gen 3 and earlier version Glock mag. Now the Gen 4 Glock mag. And now finally the Glock Gen 5 mag. Glock Gen 5. The differences. Number one, the new Gen 5 has what Glock is calling the NDLC finish. NDLC, I don't know what that means. What they're saying it is a better finish due to an ion bonded process. And I can tell you that I noticed it even before I had researched or read the Glock flyer. The quality of the finish just looks substantially better. It's a deeper blue or black finish versus the Gen 4, Gen 3, kind of rough, frankly, unquality looking finish. I love my Glocks, but the Gen 5 finish just, it looks good. Aside from the beautifulness of it, Glock is touting improved function because it is less corrosive and it's less prone to scratches. So that is yet to be seen. I've only had it for 2 days, but I can tell you it definitely looks better, and it really has a better look of craftsmanship. So if you're into prettier things or pretty things, you won't be disappointed as compared to the earlier versions of the Glock. The next thing that they've changed is the barrel. Gone are the polyagonal rifling barrels. Those polyagonal rifling barrels that everybody who shot lead cast bullets complained about and warned that it was going to cause substantial danger due to lead deposits building up in the barrel. You know, I don't know what quality of lead that they were shooting through their barrel, but the Glock Gen 3 that you see on the right, I put thousands of lead cast bullets through its polyagonal rifling. And yeah, there would be deposits of lead, but I just, cleaned it and, never really had a problem. And I've shot 400 or 500 rounds in a sitting, so it was no big deal to me. But the new barrel is a traditional lands and grooves type of barrel, but according to Glock, it's made to a higher spec than just lands and grooves, and they call it the Marksman barrel or GMB barrel, Glock Marksman barrel. What I like about it is that they placed a recessed crown in that barrel. And coming from being a former sniper, recessed crowns, they're just awesome. I like them. I like what they do for me. If I have to muzzle tap a bad guy, or I fall down, I'm not gonna damage my crown, and my rifling and my accuracy isn't going to automatically go out the window. So that's a pretty big improvement. The accuracy that you get from that traditional lands and grooves barrel is going to be better as well than polyagonal. Of course, how much do you need when you're point blank? Probably it doesn't matter that much as far as a defensive barrel is concerned, but without a doubt, it's nice to have more than less. So accuracy improvement, protection of your barrel improvement, it's a nice touch on that crowned barrel. So big kudos for them on that particular change. Next big change is the removal of the finger grooves. And for me, being a medium to small hand-sized person, this is huge. It really was an improvement for me over a stock Glock in my ability to get my hand where I needed it to be. I didn't feel like I was fighting it. I put close to maybe 400 or 500 rounds through this Glock 17 yesterday with no slide bite, which I will tell you, I always get slide bite in Glock standard Gen 3, 4, and earlier version Glocks because my hands are dimensionally challenged. So the grip really was reduced. If I can measure those up or put those even together, you can see the Gen 3 really hangs out. I don't know how you would measure that exactly without a caliper, but I'm guessing at least 1/4 of an inch or close to it, which was a big improvement. And then these humps are gone, so there's some thickness removed there, and it really felt good in my hand. Without me sending it to a custom shop, which is a nice perk, especially for military and law enforcement men and women who can't, by policy, send their gun to a custom shop. They have to go with that issued gun in the stock format. It's going to be a big winner for them. And if you have medium to small frame hands and you don't have huge amounts of money to spend in the customization market, this, to me, is worth the change alone if there's not other reliability trade-offs, which I did not see. So ergonomics are better. Comfort was definitely better. My control was improved as well because of that ergonomics as well. So nice touch with finally, after decades, removing those finger notches. Change number 4, the flared magwell. You can kind of see it here in this picture. Gen 3 being on the right, Gen 5 being on the left. It's not a big deal. I mean, if you're in a gunfight and you have to do a magazine change, that's going to be a pretty rare circumstance. That somebody has, especially if you're not law enforcement, has an extra magazine. I always carry several extra mags because, having been in gunfights before, I would rather have and not need than need and not have. But for the average person, the average Joe, that is out there, honestly, most people are carrying one mag. Probably not as big an issue. But in the training department, I've thoroughly believe that if a person can, really be efficient in their magazine changes, it brings everything together. It improves and perpetuates that learning cycle. So having an edge, if you will, without adding some extra weight in a flared magwell on your gun, or the added bulk of a flared magwell on your gun for the concealment crowd, this is a nice perk, and it really does work. I was enjoying it as I was shooting it. So another nice touch by Glock. Also, as part of this grip change, was we got checkering all the way down, and I really enjoyed that checkering versus the intermittent checkering feel because of the finger notches. It was one more thing that, to me, added control, and of course control equals all those things that you want to have on your side. Okay, change number 5, ambidextrous slide stop. This is one of those things that, until I really started training a lot of people, it really wasn't that big a deal to me. A huge amount of the population is right-handed. So, and I'm one of those right-handed folks. It's not a big deal to me to have a slide catch only on that left side of the gun. But for those left-handed folks, a slide stop that they can actually reach that works in their body's ergonomics is pretty valuable. Of course, we know, if you know much about Glock, the Gen 4 changed the magazine release so that you could swap it out to the right-hand side of the gun for the left-handed shooter. But if you have a catastrophic malfunction that, brass is mangled or whatever from the manufacturer, or due to some debris being introduced into the action, and you've got to lock your slide to the rear, man, it is something that left-handed shooters always struggle with. So the ambidextrous slide stop is a nice feature. It's not a perfect feature. There's some problems that can come about from having ambi stuff. One of the things it can cause is occasionally a right-handed shooter will push that slide stop up and catch the notch in the slide and inadvertently lock the slide to the rear. While I didn't see it in the first 400 to 500 rounds that I put through this gun, it doesn't mean that it can't happen. One thing I really like that Glock has done, though, in this Gen 5 is they kept a low profile and consistent to both sides slide catch. It's improved over the Gen 3, Gen 4 slide catch that's really nothing more than some really light gauge stamped metal. And some of them hug the frame so tight that people struggle to actually get it when they need to get it. The Gen 5 is a heavier gauge material. It hangs out a little bit, or just enough that I had no problem at all tripping that slide catch when I needed, or sending it forward when I needed. I really like the ambi touch, especially for those left-handed operators. All right, change number 6 is they've changed the magazine itself. We have a Gen 5 magazine, a Gen 4 magazine, a Gen 3, up to, I think, the drop-free magazine. We have an ETS mag and a Magpul Glock mag. And I will say I shot all of these mags on the range and had no experience problems with them at all. I can't say that something down the line won't occur, but I pretty much doubt it. So getting to the Gen 5, what is different about it? Obviously, there's the bright orange follower. And that is for the benefit so that you can see through the witness holes and give yourself an idea of where you're at as far as rounds a little bit more easily. It also is supposed to attract or give you a better idea when the gun is actually empty. You should know something's wrong when your slide's locked to the rear or the gun stops firing anyway, but at a quicker glance, you're going to know, hey, this gun is empty, at least until that follower gets dingy and nasty from carbon fouling. So the next change of the magazine is they beveled this front base plate. Not real sure what that does for us other than maybe a slight improvement for concealed carry footprint, but hey, it's cool. So slight change, but overall pretty nice. Change number 7, trigger improvement. Now, I will tell you, since 1999, I have ran a Glock pistol. And I think I've said before, if I haven't, I'm going to say it now. And you'll probably hear me say it quite a few times, especially if you've been in classes with me. I'm a big creature of habit. I don't like to swap my carry guns, at least from manufacturer to manufacturer. I like consistency. I perform better when I know what's coming. And I'm going to say that most people are just like me in that. If you know your gun, if you know what to expect, you're going to be better off with it. I can't see any personal benefit from a person jumping from a Ruger to a Sig Sauer to a Glock to an H&K to, any other gun and going back and forth. You're building inconsistency there. But for me, the Glock trigger has always been acceptable. What I liked about it is it was the same trigger pull every time. That was a big improvement for me coming from a hammer-fired or double single type of variety where I had a substantially hard trigger pull followed by an easier trigger pull. I'm going to be honest. I'm as lazy as the next guy. I like to shoot good. So when I was running a double single, what did I do? I cheated the system. I shot the single action more than I did the double action. And then I moaned and groaned, whined and complained when my double action shot wasn't as good or as fast as I wanted it to be. So the Glock trigger, to me, originally in 1999, was a better trigger than I had ever handled before. And for those out there that are big 1911 fans, yes, I was issued a 1911 in the Marine Corps. I carried a 1911 in the Marine Corps. I shot expert with a 1911 in the Marine Corps during one phase of my tenure there. I know the single action trigger pull. So you're comparing apples to oranges. Yes, it's the same trigger pull every time, and I get it, and I like it, and all that. But when it comes to having 17 rounds in a fight or having 7 or 8, thank you very much. I'm going to take the 17. Okay, so that's me. Now, getting back to the Gen 5, sorry for the rabbit chase. They've made improvements to this trigger. I can't say specifically what all those changes were, but the feel of it is definitely smoother, less spongy, less rattly, if you will. It weighed out on my Lyman trigger pull gauge at somewhere over the 6-pound mark. 6.5, I think, was the average in the Gen 5 that I tested. And in my Gen 3 duty gun, or old duty gun, I was closer to 7 pounds. And I will tell you, this gun has had tens of thousands of rounds through it. It's as smooth as silk. And even though it's a stock 5.5-pound trigger bar, it doesn't pull like a standard 5.5 pound trigger bar. And so the Gen 5 out of the box was already better than that well broke in gun. So if I had to guess at one thing that was a big change to that trigger pull, it is going to be the striker safety or firing pin safety being beveled. That big button right there caused my trigger bar to have more of an abrupt take up as it was going up over this kind of rounded hump, whereas this beveled striker safety really does have a more fluid, smooth feel to the trigger take up, but yet it still has a weight that nobody should have a problem with in a carry gun. Change number 8, slide beveling. Here we have a Glock 19 Gen 4, a Glock 3 22 as we've looked at before, and the new Gen 5 Glock 17. And you can see they've beveled the front end of the slide versus the original kind of squared off abrupt ending of that slide. What benefit is that, you ask? Well, it's going to make it easier for the shooter to reholster this gun. They will no longer need a real wide flared holster to get that nose of the gun back into the holster. So it's going to make their reholstering smoother and more efficient. It should also cut down on slide wear to that front end of the gun. Another nice perk if you're into showroom pieces. I could really care less whether my gun has some scratches on it. If it doesn't, frankly, I'm not working it hard enough. Change number 9. The Gen 5 now only has 2 takedown pins versus 3 pins that were present in the Gen 3 and 4. The 3 takedown pins in the 4, the 3 takedown pins in the 3, and the 2 in the Gen 5. Basically, that's not going to improve performance any, but it is because of the ambidextrous slide stop and the changes needed internally for that to happen. Change number 10. This is a subtle change, and so far I found it to be true on every Gen 5 that I've touched. However, I cannot speak that this is not something that is just present in the models that I've seen. I have not heard anybody talking about this, either Glock or any of the reviews that I have personally seen. So the 10th change has to do with the face of the recoil spring. In the Gen 4, as you can tell, it hangs past the lower receiver out the drop down portion of the front slide. Even the Gen 3 had a protruding polymer nub that extended past that slide. But in the Gen 5, they've almost made it a complete flush face. Now, I don't know if everybody else has experienced this, but on multiple occasions, I have seen that plastic nub broken off during violent encounters. I've seen it more in the Gen 4 than I did in the Gen 3, just because it's a larger face, and it usually occurs when that muzzle is rammed into the ground or into a bad guy, which does happen in the real world. And I've seen that plastic or polymer face broken off. Now, I will say that in each time that I've seen this, probably at least 2, there might have been a third time, in each case, the gun still operated. It didn't change the performance of the Glock one bit. All the springs were still captured. All of them were still running. It didn't cause a breakdown of the gun. But the next time that end user took that gun apart, now that captured spring, or captured springs as in the Gen 4, were no longer captured. They were loose, they were a mess, and they had to be replaced, or the end user was having a headache on their hands. So for me, while it's slight, and while I can't say that this is consistent across the board because I've only laid my hands on 5 different Glock Gen 5s, I will say that the 2 that I have, it's very apparent that that recoil spring polymer portion is not extending out from the slide nearly as much. That to me is another nice improvement. Change number 11. And this one is almost laughable, but I've heard a couple reviewers talk about it, so I feel like I have to follow suit and talk about it as well. And that is improvement to the Glock standard sights. I can't hardly say it without laughing. As a Glock shooter, the polymer sights are pieces of junk. They get replaced on any Glock that I have virtually immediately. So what are these improvements, you might ask? The rear notch is a little bit wider. And the sight itself, the angle of them are taller. If you can look real closely, just that angle between the Gen 4 on the right and the Gen 5 on the left, the Gen 5 outer sides of the sight are more closely to 90 degrees, which I know they're not 90 degrees, but you know, I'm not going to measure it. They're less tapered in. Big improvement? I don't know. Not really in my part, or in my opinion. Not really in my opinion, because I'm taking these suckers out. My favorite sights are the True Glow TFX Pros. Bright, strong night sights and fiber optics. To me, you can't beat them. As I was looking at this Glock 17, I noticed that the rear sight was definitely not centered. I won't go over every little detail, but just suffice it to say they've made some changes internally aside from what you feel in that improved trigger. Probably the most obvious, if you are a Glock armor and you go to take them apart, they have a captured return spring. That may not be the correct terminology for it, but a little bit different return spring kind of setup than the Gen 3 and 4. And the striker or firing pin safety being beveled. Of course, that created a completely different design so that plunger, as I like to call it, is kept oriented in the correct manner in the slide. So those are the big changes. Of course, the Glock Marksman barrel and the changes that come from that. The trigger bar, the lack of return spring piece that used to come down off of that in the 3 and 4s. You know, the gun, it just works. Roughly 400 to 500 rounds through the Glock 17 Gen 5 yesterday. Not one malfunction. I wouldn't expect it to have, but it shot really well. I feel very comfortable with the Glock Gen 5 and would carry it personally as a defensive gun. I'm going to shoot dot torture, and I'm going to repeat Magpul mag, ETS mag, Glock Gen 3 and prior mag, Glock Gen 4 mag, and Glock Gen 5 magazine. So here we go, mag pull mag. We're gonna go 5-shot slow fire in dot number 1. Five shot. Dot number 2 is 5 draws on dot 2. Okay. Dots 3 and 4 run together. It's draw 1 on 3, 1 on 4, and we'll repeat that a total of 4 times. ETS mag. Now we're moving on 5 draw strokes, strong hand only, which for me is going to be my right hand. Okay, dots 6 and 7 run together. It's 2 on 6 from the draw, transition 2 on 7. I'm going to go ahead and swap to the Gen 3 and earlier Glock mag. Last time. All right, dot 8 is 5 rounds all support hand. Going back to the ETS mag, dots 9 and 10 run together, 1 round on 9. Gun should go to slide lock, come back with a magazine change, and 1 round into dot 10, and we'll do that a total of 3 times. I'm going to use the P mag as my empty. Swap back to my P mag. Swap back to my P mag. Last time. All right, we have a pass, although I've got 2 on the line, 3 on the line, but it is a passing run. So we're going to do a very unscientific accuracy test. We're roughly 20 yards, and I have 2 magazines that I did not shoot
in the dot torture, the Glock Gen 4 mag and the Glock Gen 5 mag. And so we're going to just target the dummy with headshots only and see if I can keep him in the noggin.